Good evening. Oh, geez. Wow. Excuse me. My name's Kevin Berry. I'm pinch hitting for Ann this evening. She should be coming in later on. Next week, Eric J. Doolin will present Left for Dead, a true story of a wild and fateful encounter between an American sailing vessel, a shipwrecked British brig, and a British warship in the Falklands during the War of 1812. Tonight's sponsors are Bob and Alex Freese. Where are you? Oh, there they are, thank you. And Alex also donated some food for later on this evening. And I understand that Bob has checked it and said it's good to go. Thank you. All right, buy a brick. Ann will bring some applications and she'll leave them at the reception desk. We're trying to get bricks to pay for part of the walk, and there's an example of what the printing will look like. Tonight's speaker is Steve Waller and his wife Jane Ward. They've lived on the shores of Long Pond in Centerville. They were married in Centerville in 1972, and both of them had careers in medicine and in the U.S. Air Force. Thank you for your service. They lived in San Antonio, the Philippines, and Washington, D.C., and Germany. They moved back to Centerville in 2018 after Steve had been a professor of global health at Uniformed Services University in Bethesda. He has over 100 scientific publications and book chapters. Steve and Jane have 3 daughters and 2 granddaughters. Their priorities today are water quality and reducing the impact of climate change on future generations. Let's give them a Cape Cod warm welcome.
Thank you very much. As you may already recognize, I lost some of my voice. That's why I retired from teaching. But if you can't hear me, or me to repeat something, please just let me know. I have 3 goals tonight: to inspire you about Long Pond, to talk about its natural history, and to help you and me live deliberately as Stuart asked us to do. Jane and I, as he said, retired from the Air Force about 20 years ago, and we had been married here, so when I lost my voice, this was a natural place for us to come to. Her parents lived on Lake Rehoboth, but the houses we looked there at weren't as nice as the one we found on Long Pond. And there we go. The title of my book, as you can see, is A Moving Meditation. And you may know some forms of meditation involve moving. You don't have to be seated in a lotus position in a chair to do meditation. I find that inspiration in my canoe on Long Pond. I try to go out almost every day, year-round. Even when in the winter, I just wear mittens, and it's very peaceful, and I enjoy it very much.
I'm going to read a section from the book. Paddling silently is an art that requires continuous attention to detail. If the whole blade is gently and vertically immersed, there will be no splash or noise. The canoe may swivel and the waves slap the bottom of the boat on a windy day, but with care, that too can be avoided. The entire process is a moving meditation. Paddling silently, watching all around me, and with minimum effort, breathing through my nose and staying in the moment. The water's surface stillness can create a mirror of the sky, and an incoming osprey can be first detected by its reflection. I've attached a cushioned seat with an upright back to the canoe seat. It allows me to keep an erect posture. The practice is close to transcendental meditation, Zen paddling.
We live about a mile from Fairfield Beach. We go down there quite often too. But I mentioned in the preface to the book I was inspired particularly by Thoreau and by Sigurd Olsen, who you may know lived up in Wisconsin and was one of the first naturalists, and Aldo Leopold from Minnesota, and Chris Norman, who was a professor of sparrows. And Norman and some of his buddies paddled across the very northern part of Canada from west to east toward the Hudson Bay in the 1970s. And they couldn't make it in 1 year. They had to stop in a cabin and spend the winter up there well past the tree line, up in the boondocks. And then they finished the paddle the next spring. Laura Wentz, after he finished that paddle, became a professor and mostly focused, as I said, on sparrows. And some sparrows migrate up to that part of Canada. So he went back 3 years to that same cabin and examined the sparrows that had migrated in, took data, published data, brought it back to his students. So all that inspires me when I'm out on the pond.
Unobtrusive on a shelf in my crowded library during the snowy days of February was Sigurd Olsen's wonderful 1982 book of Time and Place. The winter had dragged darkly on, and the pandemic hung ominously over every human event. Ice and cold temperatures kept me from my usual daily canoe excursions on the 50-acre lake out our back door on Cape Cod. As I reread Olsen's series of poignant essays about canoes, campsites, wilderness, predators, and humankind, they resonated deeply with my own recent experiences on a Cape Cod kettle pond.
I was originally inspired to paddle on freshwater ponds up in that same area in northern Minnesota in 1970. And this is me and my dad and my little brother. And Dad and Jeff are both gone now, but they're with me when I paddle them.
I share Olsen's profound reverence for the Boundary Waters wilderness and the big lakes along the Canada-Minnesota border. He spent most of his 20th century life living on Burnside Lake, west of Ely. He refers to his canoe trip partners as voyageurs, and in return, they call him bourgeois, a title of respect given by the original voyageurs to their leaders. 50 years ago, I paddled and portaged those original voyageurs' routes in magical lakes in the Hudson's Bay watershed on both sides of the international border with my Boy Scout troop, including my younger brother, Jeff, and my dad. Both Dad and Jeff are gone now, but they would agree that we struggled during those 2 weeks with fierce headwinds, feisty northern pike, and finding the best campsite, but with few of the tedious details of civilized life. The rich memories of those transcendent weeks are revived in a delightful way by Olsen's eloquent words.
And I find that our pond is really a beautiful four season place to watch wildlife and enjoy it. But We have lovely autumn colors in the red maples. We have river ice, and we have pollen on the pond this time of year. However, there are 6 or 7 long ponds on Cape Cod. That's true. That's not right for a pond this beautiful to have such a redundant name. I've hoped I could find out what the Wampanoag called the pond, but I haven't been able to determine that yet. And early in the morning, late in the evening, when the sun is low, we get a beautiful golden light off the trees across the pond. You know, when the sunlight comes in at a shallow angle to the surface, all the red gets shattered away, and the blue and yellow gets bit down where we can see it. So that's what's happening here. I'm reminded of Vincent van Gogh and his love of the light in Provence. I feel the same way about Long Pond. Many people are aware that Kettle ponds were named by the early European settlers because they're round like a tea kettle. What many people don't know is the geology. The reason they're round is because a big chunk of ice fell off the glacier, made a hole, and the dirt washed out from the ice as it melted, filled in around that. And when the ice melted, you had a round pond. Now, most kettle ponds on Cape Cod have no stream coming in or going out. Our pond is the same way until settlers came and did a herring run, which I'll tell you about in just a minute.
About 18,000 years ago, the northern third of the Earth was hidden beneath a mile-thick sheet of glacial ice. Over much of the previous 2 million years, northern hemisphere ice packs received more snow each winter than could be melted in the following summer's heat, so the ice got thicker and heavier. The weight of the ice crushed the soil and stone beneath it and inexorably pushed the leading edge of the ice south. When the climate warmed, the ice would retreat in cycles of many thousands of years. This cycle of ice ages followed by warming periods may have repeated 20 times. During the most recent ice incursion, the leading edge of the thick ice pushed across the Gulf of Maine and Cape Cod Bay. It crept inexorably onward at the speed that human fingernails grow, creating an enormous pile of rocks and sand at its leading edge, a moraine now called Cape Cod. Long Island in New York State was pushed up at the same time.
And nearly every pond on Cape Cod is a kettle pond, created in an instant, not in an eon, like most geological structures. Here's a schematic to show you. So, as the glacier recedes and chunks of ice fall off, some sand is washed out from the melting ice. It surrounds the ice. And then, when they melt, they wind up with all these little ponds, like Long Pond. We call it is another kettle pond. I think our pond looks like it has 3 kettles right next to each other that all come together. We call it maybe 10 kettles. It's much bigger. If you look at Cape Cod from space, it looks like Swiss cheese. That's all those kettle pond holes created by the ice. Long Pond is almost too small to see.
When the earliest Native American immigrants arrived, A mile-high monolith of sheer ice may have dominated the northern horizon of Cape Cod. With so much water tied up in glacial ice, the sea level was 400 feet lower than it is today. The islands of Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard, the remainder moraines of an earlier ice sheet migration, were contiguous with the mainland, as was an area that today is George's Bank, prime fishing ground 100 miles east of the Cape. As the first humans were moving on into the Cape Cod and Islands region, some likely walked to the present-day islands without getting their feet wet.
This is out of the Brewster Museum of Natural History. Oh, this was dry grounds 15,000 years ago. You can see up there the stuff. Uh-oh. Sorry, I screwed up. Push the wrong button. I'm sorry. Good, thank you. And as I've said several times, I particularly enjoy the canoe. We have several kayaks, but the kayak has sit right on the floor. I find it hard to get out. I also don't like the two paddles, too much splashing, too much noise. I like to move smoothly and quietly, but I'm not in a hurry. I can go faster in a kayak, but I'm not in a rush. So I prefer the canoe. Also, my boat has no keel, so it moves a lot this way. That keeps me focused on the way I draw my stroke to keep the boat going where I want it to go in the moment.
Steve starts every chapter with a haiku, and this is one of them. Canoe on the lake glides silently with each stroke, moving meditation.
And this is another haiku that I wrote. You may be aware that the Celtic people had the idea that some places, heaven and earth, are very close together. They call them thin places. Cape Cod might be a place like that. I think of Cloud's Rest and Half Dome in Yosemite are like that. Heaven is right there. It's a very thin place. Lots of interesting vegetation. One thing that happens on the pond is the pines that are too close to the edge fall into the pond. But there's one that can take 2 or 3 years. There's one I've been watching for 3 years. But 1 year, 2 years, 3 years, and finally it was all the way down. We have at least one big turtle that I see about every month or two. Must be a snapping turtle. He has a long neck and a long pointed tail, but he must dig in the bottom. His claws are about that long. He must scratch up the weeds on the bottom, and he creates some pathways. When I paddle over them, I can see them down at the bottom of the pond. And lots of other wildlife to see from our canoe. We often will have a pair of swans, ospreys, sometimes as many as 5, 4 or 5 at a time. And we have river herring, which I'll tell you about in a minute. Herons, right now, the sunfish have made the little round nests on the bottom of the pond. The male sunfish swims in there and dusts it off, makes it smooth and sandy. The female comes by. If she likes what he's done, she lays her eggs in the middle of the nest. He swims over, inseminates them, and then he guards them till they hatch until the fry are ready to leave. So we must have about 100 sunfish nests on our pond right now, mostly in shallow water. I can see them as I go by. Usually there's not one fish right in the middle guarding the nest. We had a loon for almost a month this spring. That's a joy. And we have muskrats, no surprise. They're rodents, they're everywhere. But in the winter, this is the ice. Those are mussel shells. You can't eat them in the water. We ask you to bring them to the shore or climb up in the ice, break them there, and then you can eat the mussel. You just leave the shell, go back for another one. And that's probably 50 mussel shells. This is our friend across the pond house, and these are otter trash. And the otter has come up from a salt marsh down by Crayville. Hop, slide. Reminds me of Beethoven's bum, 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 bum. And the next day, he come back. They goes up to Wisconsin. So he probably went up there, had something to eat, and came home. And 2 years ago, Jane and I were on the front page of the Baltimore Patriot because we contacted the reporter about county herring and how rewarding and interesting it was. The river herring come up in April and May. We just finished with them. They come up from the ocean and they spawn in Long Pond or the herring run, goes on up to Wisconsin. Some of them go that way too. I call them ghost fish because they're gray and our fish come at night. Very few come in the daytime. If we count in the daytime, we don't see any. If we go out at 5 in the morning or even 2 in the morning, we'll see herring going by.
The heroic adventure of living for 90% of your adult life in the Atlantic Ocean, constantly on the lookout for predators, and then swimming over 1,000 miles to find the very same tiny stream on Cape Cod where you were born, avoiding the voracious predators at the mouth of the herring run and again at the entrance to Long Pond, then spawning or swimming on up to Lake Wequawket and spawning there, and finally swimming back down the run and out to sea, again dodging the packs of hungry predators, both in and above the water, and then swimming the arduous trip to the deep ocean for another year of staying ahead of predators there. What a wild roller coaster ride of drama such a life would be.
And this is our herring run. It was started in 1867. It's not natural. It was created, comes up from Crayville Beach to Long Pond, straight in an arrow. It's about 25 vertical feet. And the herring come up. So down that way is Crayville, and up this way is Long Pond. Our house is right here. Just this spring, I found that there was an earlier herring run in 1700 when nobody lived in Centerville. They dug They used their gully and connected it to the log pond and tried to get the herring to go up and down that, and it failed. But this one that they dug after the Civil War works very well.
A dear friend remembers standing in the waters of the North Side herring run in the 1960s as a seemingly infinite number of herring swarmed around her legs. There are legends about busy workmen on the job in those days dropping their tools and running for their fishing gear when somebody shouted, "The herring are running!" We heard such stories when we lived on Lake Wequaquot with my parents in the early 1970s. How easy it was to fool ourselves into thinking that such plenty then meant there was an inexhaustible supply. Like with the slaughter of the bison, otter, and beaver, we humans were fooled. Our treatment of ocean fish today implies that we did not learn our lesson.
A river herring come in two species, alewife and blueback herring. The alewife come first when the water gets up to 51 degrees, and they hold that pretty. I monitor the water with it, so they hold to that pretty carefully. And then about 10 days or 2 weeks later, when it gets up to 57, we see the bluebacks. They look identical. I read that the only way to tell them apart is to cut them open and look at the perineum. One is black and one is gray, but from the outside, they look the same. By the way, there's also Atlantic herring, and they don't come up the streams. They stay in the ocean. The herring genus is 200 times older than Cape Cod. So the ancestors of our river herring were going up streams that today are out on the continental shelf somewhere, under 400 feet of water, but not the same stream here. The alewife comes in, up into the pond to do their spawning. We don't see it, but the bluebacks spawn very visibly in the herring run. The male will bump the female. She releases the eggs, and he inseminates them and sticks to the bottom in the herring run, not in the still water of the pond. But the alewife spawn in the pond, and we don't see that happen. For that one, for that. All right, not yet. As I said, they come at very precise water temperatures, usually around the 1st of April, and they go home in June, and they break into small groups in the run, and after they depart, I suspect they form up a big school down by Fayetteville before they go out in the ocean. Here's just a chart of how they arrived in 2021. They've done this every other year also. But you see there were some very big days, a few small days, and some days of none at all, where we didn't see any at all. We had about 10,000 in 2021 and 10,000 last year. This year we had about 5,000 that we counted.
The safety of darkness may remind our herring of home deep in the Atlantic Ocean, or the daytime migrants may have been wiped out in the pre-1970s harvests, leaving only descendants of those who traveled at night. Those wee hours of the morning are also very quiet, with little human activity as the gray ghost fish slip by. We confirmed in both 2021 and 2022 that the best time to see herring on our run is from midnight to sunrise. That is the likely reason our daylight counts were 0 in 2018 to 2020. A close friend who remembers the herring run here from the 60s recalls that her dad woke her at night to come see the swarm of herring, millions, come up our herring run. So they've preferred the cover of darkness on this run in the past. Our early morning daylight hour counts may just be the stragglers from a larger nighttime army.
And then, of course, they leave their eggs and the fry. There are millions of fry. We tend to see them around the edge of the pond. And they usually stay in our pond until autumn, October, even November. And when they leave, you can see there's a million there. And there's some tiny ones. These are sandbags that they use to monitor the amount of water that goes into the run. And there's some fry on top of it. We had one year where the pond was very run dry, and the fry must have had to stay in our pond over the winter. But I looked to see what the temperature would have been in the Atlantic Ocean. It's about the same. It wasn't any warmer than our pond was that winter. We do have a few challenges at Long Pond. It's not total paradise. We've had an algae bloom every summer for the last 9 years, and we're expecting it this year too. The cyanobacteria that create the algae bloom are much older species than human beings. They're probably several million years old. And when they first formed, they created enzymes that blew off oxygen, took in carbon dioxide, blew off oxygen, and the atmosphere of the Earth, oxygen level went up from 4% to 20%, which is about what we have today. That's from the cyanobacteria. But today we still have them in the pond and in the ocean. And when they get nourished, they bloom. That nourishment comes primarily from septic leakage, from cesspools and septic ponds that are not working right. And the sewers that Boston is putting in, that will help our pond, but it's very slow, very expensive. And I think there's a lot better solutions that are available to us, cheaper and faster than sewers. The reason they close the pond during the bloom is because some cyanobacteria create a toxin, and that toxin can be strong enough to kill a human being. Certainly can kill a dog or a child, but it can also kill us if we get enough toxin in there. But it's very expensive to test the water for toxin. So instead, they test it for the cyanobacteria and use that as the surrogate for the toxin may be present. In salt water, like around Austerville, they get a bloom in the salt water. That's primarily from nitrogen from the sewage. But in the fresh water, that Long Pond is mostly phosphorus. That's the limiting factor. But there's a little bit of good news. Last year, the old ladies against underwater garbage. You may not be aware of that group, but I think that most of them farmers. A bunch of ladies that enjoy swimming, and they come in the pond, and they dive, snorkeling, and they bring up trash. And they sent one of their scouts to our pond, and she found so little trash, she said it wasn't worth sending a team. So that's good news. On my paddling excursion, I carry a long grabber I can reach down 9 feet long. I can't go to the very bottom, but most of it is shallow. So I get some of the beer cans and these bass lures, the white plastic bass lures, those are everywhere. Somebody threw golf balls around the pond. I picked those up too. They're not natural. So, in summary, it's a wonderful place to live. Jane and I enjoy it greatly. I would encourage you to read my book if you'd like. You can read more about it. We brought a few copies for sale. And thank you for your attendance. If you have any questions, or if you didn't hear anything I said, yeah.
I have a question. When you talked about the Kettle ponds being completely enclosed, how did the herring get from the ocean into the Kettle pond? Or do you dig the runs?
That our run was dug. Our run is artificial. But as far as I know, that's the only one on Cape Cod. The others are natural streams. But most of them don't have any stream. And out of 900, maybe 50 have a stream that comes and goes. Most of them don't have any. Because it was a hole in the ground. It wasn't caused by water running in there. It was caused by ice making a hole. So there's no reason for there to be a stream in or out.
And the herring runs, though, they're about 20 or 25 on the Cape, and those are all the stream, the lakes that, or the ponds that do have streams.
Okay.
So they're, the well-known ones are the one in Brewster, the Mill Run, and Stony Brook, and Harwich has a very big one.
There's a lovely one in Bowen, too. If you drive down the other side of the canal, like you go to Providence, or there on the right side, it's worth putting off during herring season. Very eager to see the herring. It's done a nice job with it. It's a beautiful spot.
In Harwich, we have a machine that counts the herring, and I think we had 20,000.
Where was that?
You had 20, but you had a lot more last year, I think. Yeah. We actually asked, because of this controversy of the volunteers to count are recruited from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m. Well, we have almost none in our run in those times. So we found that the Woodwell Research Center and the MIT Sea Grant herring program were both trying to match up some of the automatic counters with the visual counts and see which of the runs have more fish at night. Coonamessett River also has more, and theirs is in the evening, but it's after the 7 o'clock cutoff for volunteers. So it seems a little bit logical that those that survive to come back are the ones that aren't swimming when the predators can see them. Why they don't use more? They're pretty expensive. I think that's it.
Also, they've checked them at the Monument River on the Cape Cod Canal. Visual and machine, and the machine had half the number of the visual. But they think is sometimes 2 herring go through at one time, and some herring go back.
It's,
So,
yeah, so
it's not perfect.
it's an electrical circuit that's broken. I think it's not a visual count. But the counts were down apparently across the state this year. They were down. And it was, when was it, 2005? Or when did they stop the...
Six.
2006 is the last time that people were allowed to fish, except for the Wampanoag are allowed to catch herring. But there's a terrible activity by these factory boats, the factory fishing boats that you may know. There's some that are apparently 160 feet long. They travel in pairs and they drag a net the size of a football field between them and scrape the bottom. And they spent several years working out what the advice would be with some of the commercial fishermen, some of the small boat fishermen, and had a rule, a federal rule, that you had to stay 25 miles out if you were a big trawler like that. Within a year or two, the lawyers and the lobbyists overturned that, and they're able to come in closer. So it's pretty worrisome. We had about half of what we did last year in our count, and that was common across the state. So.
And the counting machines cut down on the herring have to actually swim through the counter, so you're sort of cutting down a little bit on the area where they can frolic.
Many of the counters were designed for salmon, so the counter hole is much bigger than herring. Too big.
And the reason it's important that we keep track of the numbers is that these are the bottom of the food chain for a lot of the rest of the ocean. And if we feel bad that we don't see many cod caught on Cape Cod anymore because they were all overfished. And if we lose the little fish, we're going to lose everybody in the ocean. So it is a pretty important indicator species.
Yeah.
Another question.
Okay.
You had talked, in one of the passages you read, you talked about 20 or so warming periods.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think what we're in now is a man-made climate change, or do you think it's just part of that cycle?
It's man-made. Those happen very gradually over thousands of years. Just in my lifetime.
Right. It's definitely accelerated, but
Yeah, but there is a cycle. Definitely is. And, excuse me, I don't think anybody knows too many years of ice age, whether it's over or whether we're in a period. I don't think anyone knows that for sure. Yes.
Have you done any sort of studies, this is so on the side, I can understand why they might not bother, but any studies as to what might determine, what might cause the herring to run at night rather than during the day? I'm thinking, do you have less tree cover? Because if it's, if it's during the day, they can be seen more easily if there's like almost no tree cover. Are you in a very open area?
no, ours is really
Ours is really,
covered. Yeah, yeah. And actually, one of the other things, I don't know if you mentioned, can't remember, these are not just runs in Massachusetts. These herring run all the way from Georgia to Nova Scotia. We have friends that work with the Smithsonian marine biology teams in the Chesapeake Bay, and she's tagged some herring because they're trying to, they're removing some of the dams in small streams to see if they can have the herring go back up to the ponds that they initially spawned in. I think the same thing has happened in Maine. You can read books that are about the herring runs in Maine, but this is a species along the whole coast.
yes, sir.
I couldn't read the type of canoe that you had. I'm curious what the brand.
It's Winona. Yeah.
Winona, yeah.
It's a one-person, 13-foot boat.
Yeah.
We also have a big one.
We have a bigger one that's not particularly
It's nice.
notable, but
No,
it was my college graduation present from my grandmother. Our other one is a two-person canoe. But Winona, we got it at the Sea and Sports on Route 132. They have they still have the same one person, and they have some bigger ones. It's a nice boat.
What's your favorite kind of canoe?
Oh, we have, I don't know the brand. Ours are angled.
That's more of what I was getting at.
Yeah. Yeah, ours, I like that. I think we got those because for a few years we were in a canoe relay with friends on the Susquehanna River, and those were supposed to be, more leverage per paddle. But I like it. I like that paddle. But we're also, as Steve said, we have a few books if you want to buy one here. We are working with the other pond groups. APCC and the Commission are trying to get the different pond groups together to think about how can we be more effective with some of the ecological activities in addition to the towns all voting on sewering versus are they going to help people with IA septics and all those sorts of things. But there's a very simple way that may not appeal to everybody, but I think it might to gardeners and to people who love the ponds. You can modify your plumbing so that you divert your urine. It's the urine that has the nitrogen and the phosphate in it, the majority of it. Urine is only 1% of what goes in through our sewer systems, but it has about 80 or 90% of the nutrients that if you were to buy it at the nursery, it's what you would want to use to fertilize your yard and your garden. And MassTech, the Massachusetts Alternative Septic Test Center, is really expanding their support and their education for the different types of urine diversion plumbing. So if you're interested, if you want to get on a email list, we'll send you information about that. That's a very active group in Falmouth. Several hundred people are trying to have more. They've had a very successful pilot study involving about 40 households. They're trying to get a bigger one that goes for several years that MassTech will help coordinate. And if you want to hear about that, we can get you on their mailing list, or you can go to MassTech website. They're really expanding their education. And in fact, there's a very good meeting. It's a free all-day water quality conference that Wacoit Reserve Research Center is sponsoring next Tuesday at the Emerald Conference Center in Hyannis. So if you want to learn more about what can you do in the meantime while we wait for 20 years for the sewers to get in, I'm a little more impatient than that. I'm not sure I'll be here to see the sewers in 20 years. So anyway, thanks for your attention. Yeah.
You go to the MassTech website, and then where do you go?
Look at some of their newsletters. They talk about eco-sanitation or urine diversion. I think their recent December newsletter had quite an article. Their main article was about they're moving into this. You can also contact them and go and have a tour, and they're installing a number of different types of urine diversion fixtures, so you can actually see them in addition to their historic role, which is so important, managing and monitoring all our innovative alternative septics that are in over 4,000. They monitor the performance of all those, but they're doing a great job.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. If anyone wants to sign in, they've got that. I've got my copy.